A long time ago I thought that openly wearing your misogyny on your sleeve looked bad. But now I am starting to think it may actually be working as an asset. This is difficult to explain. First, let me just point out that while wearing misogyny on our sleeve gives our opponents ammo against us, at the same time, kissing women's asses and trying to cater to the left cultural Marxist, egalitarian, liberal, tolerant, politically correct, social justice yada yada yadas. Trying to cater to those people, who are currently in charge of all social policy, is pointless because their religion tells them men are evil, whites are evil, heterosexuals are evil, cisgendered are evil. This whole pile of philosophical horse shit that comes out of what we in America call, the left, there's no way the MRM is going to get a free pass on their shit list. They have already branded the world as, controlled by the evil white supremacist heterosexual cisgendered male patriarchy. You're not going to make an appeal to them, and they're not giving an inch. So trying to cover up what genuine misogyny that does exist in the movement, is doomed to come off as white knighting, cause infighting, split MGTOW/MRAs and misogynists, leaving the MRM devoid of members. And leaving a lot of misogynists as just pissed off but hurt woman haters with no outlet, except maybe strangling hookers or something. At least if the MRM is not so quick to pussy worship and white knight for women, the misogynists will join, take their anger, and channel it into something productive, and I think once men have equality, their personal motivation to be pissed off at women will die down. And I think when they entered the movement as an outlet, they will understand more about male and female nature. And the level of their misogyny will die down. I picture a guy saying, "Dude, I hate women, they get free meals, they take their ex-husbands to the cleaners, they complain when we can't give them enough. They say all men are pigs. And they get away with murdering us if they can come up with a good sob story, I fucking hate women." And me saying, "Yeah, I hear ya. Now if you wave this father's rights banner and not talk so loud about how much you hate pussy, that'd be just swell, mate." Considering that is pretty much the picture of us that has already been painted and handed to everyone that is not already on our side. Since that is already what is shown. Since that is the current view of us. Turning a blind eye to a legitimately misogynistic comment, may be in our best interest. It beats the hell out of the alternative, which is to basically nail them to a fucking cross for saying something unflattering about women. But most importantly, pandering to the left, pandering to the liberals, the social justice warriors, it's not going to work. We will gain not an inch of ground by pandering to them. We, with our warmest happy face and best foot forward, are still seen as a bunch of butthurt crybabies who either just hate women, must be a bunch of fags, or just need to man up and stop acting like pussies. That's how we're seen when we have our politically correct faces on as it is. I say we've done enough pandering to them. I believe the more politically savvy MRAs and the misogynists complement each other and keep each other in line. That's why I am not so quick to point out examples of uncalled for misogyny or leftist appeals like sticking a useless fucking H in our movement. I think both are needed. And needed to automatically keep each other in check by the mere presence of the other. Otherwise what you'd end up with is a bunch of butthurt misogynists who spin their wheels and go nowhere and amount to no change, no philosophical enlightenment, no contribution whatsoever to gender politics. And on the other side a bunch of MRAs trying to out-liberal the liberals, and basically castrating themselves to pander to feminists in the hopes of earning their approval. As it is now, we really do seem to have both extremes in our movement, but those are the minor elements at both extremes. The majority of the movement has a healthy balance between these two extremes. So I don't feel the need to jump on anyone too quickly for showing signs of either extreme. Again, I think that when the genuine misogynists are working side by side with the most politically correct gender egalitarian, if we can just have a bit of trepidation about calling the other out on their extreme viewpoint, and just accept that there are going to be some extremists in the movement, we can have a lot less infighting. And at the same time each of the extremes may be compelled to be a little less extreme when they realize their extremist view is deeply in the minority and they have to work within the mainstream of the movement. Like taking hot water and ice cubes and forcing them to mix, one cancels out the other. So I think it is in our best interest to not be so quick to call someone out when we see their more extreme viewpoints surfacing. I say let a certain level of misogyny slide, try to ignore it until it really gets out of hand. Let's not call the entire Coast Guard because of one or two vandals. And let me also say, putting on our most woman-friendly face, pandering to the politically correct crowd, is a complete waste of time. But throwing rocks at the MRAs that are doing this is even worse than a waste of time. I think our movement will be alright as long as our extremists remain a small minority, and don't become majority, or as long as our movement does not graduate the most extreme elements to the positions of leadership. We really do need to be mindful that feminism has become a sick joke because it took the most extreme elements and put them on the royal seat of power, rather than just turning their backs on those extremists and ignoring them. We should be mindful of that. But at the same time, let's not get ourselves whipped into a frenzy and go on a witch hunt to weed out the misogynists the moment one guy out of 200 posts something uncalled for in the comments of a video. And let us also accept that there is going to be a certain level of misogyny in our movement. You can't have an intellectual war without any animosity towards your opponents. You can't have a genuine war without some animosity. I think if our misogyny averages out to a level 5, we'll be okay. I wouldn't even cringe at a level 7. It's when the shit is around a level 10 with, all women should be raped to death, that I say that's going too far. And as long as those comments aren't getting huge props, and as long as shit like that isn't coming out of actual content providers, I shrug off those very rare comments as being nothing more than trolls anyhow. And really don't feel the need to make a video series on how important it is to be politically correct and not offend the women's. I don't think it is healthy for our movement to take a gender theory or a gripe off the table for fear it will look non-woman friendly. As a movement, we are going to have to be as philosophical as much as political, perhaps even more philosophical. And in being philosophical we are going to have to come up with a lot of theories on gender, and this is going to rely on a ton of generalizations. And a lot of these generalizations are going to upset women. And we're going to get cries of misogynist from our enemies, and cries of, not all women are like that, and we are simply going to have to ignore these cries, and ignore charges of, you're all a bunch of butthurt crybaby faggots and misogynists. We as a movement, are simply going to have to ignore that shit, and view people who make such statements as antithetical to the movement's prosperity. We simply cannot afford to have our movement turned into yet another fucking safe space for women. We as men are going to have to view this movement as for us by us. And we're going to have to speak openly and frank no matter how much it might offend women. Up until now, all gender discussion has been left to women. Men are only allowed to speak of women in glorifying ways, or talk about them sexually. Any other effort to talk about gender, from men, will immediately result in attacks from feminists, women in general, and white knights. Thus men in this movement also have every right to cringe the moment a woman enters the movement and begins saying anything resembling the tired old female pathology of entering male domain and claiming, what we need is more women. Women are good for us as a movement/industry. And the best way to get more women is to celebrate and glorify them and to absolutely abstain from any comments or behaviors that might make them feel unwelcome or insecure or threatened. No matter what men do, women will always muscle their way in and start up with this bullshit until the entire space becomes a female-dominated safe space. Women are going to try to do this, it is a part of their instinctive nature. And we simply cannot allow this movement to fall victim to that the way every other male-created space has. I say let this be, at the very least, the one space where women are not permitted to pull that bullshit. This movement simply cannot take a step forward so long as we are all too afraid to say what's in our hearts for fear that some woman is going to get angry or get her feelings hurt. Furthermore, we must be cautious of women entering our movement and then telling us what behaviors we must change, since most of the, you men need to start doing and stop doing, rhetoric translates to, this is how you males need to behave to better accommodate me and or my fellow woman. Again, it is female instinct for women to treat males as utilities whose behavior must be curtailed and critiqued so as to maximize the value of the behavior for the benefit of women. I bring up the fact that women get furious over men doing something for themselves that doesn't benefit women. Again, going your own way is the ultimate, "fuck you, I won't be a utility for your benefit," to a woman's narcissistic ego that tells her men are her utilities. Furthermore, a little misogyny would do our culture good. We have such a female-centric society that is completely geared towards pampering females, thus keeping them in a childlike state of emotionally erratic behavior, greed, and narcissism. That bit about, "come on dude, you're being a total girl," that shaming tactic needs to start working against women. I think if women started manning up, it would be very healthy for them. They might even get off their asses and quit being so fucking useless if society didn't tell them that they are entitled to anything and everything, just because they're girls. Women seriously need to stop being pampered by feminism and white knights. They need a hearty dose of misogyny to knock their spoiled asses off of their pedestals and bring them down here to where us men are. I think a huge part of a woman's narcissism is actually cultural. We put them on high and mighty pedestals until they become so blind to male suffering, so blind to their own privilege. And then tell them that they are entitled to everything they want. And feminism tells them they are victims of male tyranny. And because they got their heads so far up in the clouds, they believe this shit. A good hearty dose of misogyny on a cultural level would be good for them. Maybe some cultural misogyny would counterbalance the cultural misandry we currently have. And we can't have any cultural misogyny without personal misogyny. Now maybe I am wrong about all that right there, about misogyny may do us as a culture a lot of good. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And sure, I am somewhat bastardizing the word misogyny with poetic license. But I also want you to consider, all the times a male is put in his place, a misogynistic twinge comes over him. But he is instantly told by anybody and everybody that he is not allowed to have any misogynistic feelings, that misogyny is evil. So basically, when a man is wronged, in regards to gender, put in his place, any negative emotional reaction he has to this injustice is shot down and scolded out of him by telling him he's being a misogynist. Let me say that again: when a man stands up to a gender-based injustice against him, he is told he is not allowed to stand up against it or he is a misogynist. If, however, the word misogynist ceased to have a negative connotation, the tool which is used to keep him submissive, keep him in check, keep him shamed, has been taken away from our enemy, it will no longer have an effect. The word misogynist is used to put men in their place and make them withdraw from objecting to gender-based injustices. We must take away the power of that word. We cannot desensitize people to accusations of being a misogynist, if we ourselves use that word to scold each other within the movement. So basically that's my take on misogyny. And I will add, that I am not completely running on a pro-misogyny platform. My misogyny is good for our culture, contained a bit of poetic license. And for those of you who got a shitload of misogyny bottled up in you, look, if you could take that misogyny at level 10, which is screaming, "kill all women," and dial that shit down to a healthy, "damn bitches be greedy," which is around a level 7, that would probably be more politically advantageous. Also, on the idea that we are going to have women on our side, yes and no. First, we, the MRM and I am including politically active MGTOW, don't make up but a fraction of men. We can theorize that men not wanting to get married and have babies is a much higher percent, but when you take those who are politically active, they don't come anywhere near 1% of the male population. You can take the top 2 MGTOW forums, all the subscribers of Barbarossa, Stardust, and Girl Rights Watch, add it all together, not even considering the majority of these numbers are overlap, and I think the number totals something like 53,000. Again, less than 1% of English-speaking men. Actually the math comes out to 0.0 to 4%. Do we need more women in our movement? Well yeah, but hey, we need more men in our movement. Now let me display a graphic showing how I arrive at those numbers. Now I realize that is an inaccurate way to measure the size of our movement, but I did it just to give a glimpse of the numbers. Point is, we'll work on getting women in our movement later. We haven't even gotten close to recruiting all the men. Furthermore, getting women on our side is difficult. We're essentially asking women to please, pretty please, work really hard to work for an outcome that will strip them of their power and privilege. Yeah, ask the most selfish and narcissistic demographic with the biggest persecution complex, to please make a huge altruistic sacrifice and hand over all their power and privilege. Good luck with that. But here's a thought. Every time men get together and start doing something, the moment it becomes big, what do women always do? They pour in and demand to be a part of it. It's compulsive. Women have to be trendy, have to be in style, are ruled by their sense of fashion and conformity, and for some reason, when guys do something that becomes the new cool or becomes in any way successful, the women have to pour in and demand to be a part of it. It's only unfortunate that the moment they start becoming a part of it, they start in with all this, "We need more women, got to make this a safe space for women," bullshit. But as I said, if we make it rule number one, that this movement will never become all about my vagina, never become another safe space for women, then when they pour in, we will have the women which will bring the white knights and then liberate the white knights from their white knightdom. And so on and so forth. So again, allow me to reiterate, we do not need to get on hand and knee and place women on pedestals in order for this movement to succeed. A moderate and reasonable level of misogyny will not hurt this movement. Demanding from our fellow MGTOW/MRA that he be as misogynistic or politically correct as ourselves, actually will hurt our movement. Letting our fellow MGTOW/MRA slide when pandering to the left or being a misogynist, is in our best interest, so long as either extreme is in the minority. And I want to add one more thing. I personally do not consider myself a misogynist. But I don't say that because I fear being stuck with that label. I don't say that as a way of denying it to an intellectual opponent. For example, feminists would often say, "You're just a misogynist," as a retort to me debunking their feminist bullshit. I would make no effort to confirm or deny misogyny. I would simply remind them that my personal feelings are irrelevant to the argument. I would say, "Do you believe it is justice that women be allowed to enter into the military, yet not forced to register with selective service?" She would retort with, "You just hate women." I would retort with, "That's not an answer to my question." She says, "You're just a misogynist, you're privileged and just scared that us women might get some of your power." I again retort, "Please stop making assumptions about my emotions, and stick to answering my question. Do you believe women being allowed to enter into military like a man, but being exempt from the draft, is justified?" I would simply refuse to answer whether or not I was a misogynist, since my personal feelings were irrelevant to the facts themselves. This is also why I don't go around tossing out the word misandrist at the drop of a hat. Calling someone a bigot isn't much of a rebuttal. I'm not saying I'll never call someone that, I'm just saying it is not my go-to rebuttal for anything. But at any rate, I am not a misogynist. My opponents will never be convinced of that, so I make zero effort to prove it. I know I have friends in the MRM who are very skeptical of that claim, but oh well, I'll make no effort to prove what my emotions are to them. As I'm sure I said in one of my videos in the past, judge an idea on its own merit, not on the merit of the speaker, and judge the speaker's merit on how many good ideas he has, not on what his theoretical motives might be.